Aloha from Hawaii. Thank you for everyone for joining me today. My name is Vanessa Taylor and I am a student with Liberty University Online. I'm currently studying for my master's in Human Services Counseling, and this is my final project for the Interpersonal Communications course HSCO 508. The title of my project is Conversation, the Two-Way Street. This class has provided me with some great insight of self and how my identity is constantly changing, and I would like to share them with you. Through the reading assignments, discussion boards, and insight from both my peers and instructor, I've learned many skills and how I should plan to implement them while interacting with others. Let's get started. Throughout this presentation, I will be defining interpersonal communication. I will be identifying an overarching goal of mine. I will be describing how my behavioral blend and background influence my communication skills. I'll be identifying potential barriers in my interpersonal context and how I plan to overcome them, and my plan of action for my overarching goal. Nowadays, having a strong sense of interpersonal communication skills is seen as essential to all individuals, as it is admittedly beneficial to all aspects of our lives. Effective communication skills are critical to achieving not only social success, but professional as well. Next slide. Think back to when class first started. Did you really listen to your fellow peers and what they had to say? Would you say that after this class, you've become more aware of your listening skills and what you need to work on? Like Peterson, have you ever wondered why so many people pay professionals to listen to them when they have friends? One could say that it's probably because although most of us think we listen well, we really don't. Important to remember that conversation is a two-way street. It's not all about you, but it's not all about the other person either. Next slide, please. Throughout this course, we have come to understand that in communication there are two things going on at all times. Information is coming in and going out. Stewart uses the term inhaling and exhaling as a metaphor to describe the process of communication. Next slide. I had a few interesting facts about communication according to Burley Allen that I wanted to point out. We spend about 70% of our waking hours in verbal communication. Also, listening as a method of taking in information is used far more than reading and writing combined. And my personal favorite, God gave us 2 ears, but only 1 mouth. Some people say that it's because He wanted us to spend twice as much time listening as talking. Others claim it's because He knew listening was twice as hard as talking. Next slide, please. My overarching goal: to become a level 1 listener, to create meaningful connections with others by making others feel valued, listened, and confident. According to Burley Allen, listening is a way to acknowledge someone that often increases self-esteem. It is seen as a way of saying, "You're important. I'm listening to you." I have always been my own worst critic. As an adult, I've made some great improvements, but I'm still having trouble dealing with the perception and self-image. I agree with Burley Allen in that she stated, acknowledgement is a basic, universal human need. We as humans need someone who can sometimes just sit and listen to what we have to say. Next slide, please. The concept of the self in the social world is the knowledge that is gathered and learned by an individual. It's an internal recognition of oneself and the values, beliefs, and goals that make up an individual. I continue to have challenges with self-perception as a result of being in an environment where positive reinforcement was very scarce. Consequently, this too has affected the way I communicate. When we perceive ourselves in a certain manner, it can at times be reflected in our interpersonal communication. For me, being a female, 32, I'm married, I have 2 children. My parents have been divorced since I was 7. I attempted college straight out of high school and did not do well. I came home, joined the Army, served for 6 years. I became very strong-willed and determined to prove that I could be someone. Next slide, please. Positive and negative influences that have shaped who I am. I grew up in a loving home. I was educated. I was supported by my loved ones who had high expectations of me. Negative, tough love mentality. I grew up with a lot of self-doubt and anxiety. I can be stubborn, and I've always felt the need to be perfect. Next slide, please. Our identities are built upon a complex array of characteristics that make us who we are. It can be defined as multidimensional in that our features grow and are constantly changing. We learn through our experiences, and we may either choose to grow from those or take them as negatives. Next slide, please. It's important to realize that both the talker and the listener have power. Hearing what you want to hear creates a listening barrier because you're not hearing what is actually being communicated. Making myself open to questions and discourse, if I'm open to conversation and critique, I believe that people will be more comfortable with speaking to me. Biased listening can distort a message positively or negatively when we form an opinion about the value of what has been said. It's unfair to the speaker, and it causes us to label the information as insignificant. Next slide, please. According to Carbonell, our behavioral blends are the differences in how we think, feel, and act. To better understand the 4 temperament model of behavior, I've created a visual based on Carbonell. We were instructed to take an interpersonal communications test, and I've learned that I should always try to place myself in other people's shoes. When I first got my results, I was a little surprised. I do not like speaking in front of people. I get very anxious and very nervous. But as I read more, it seemed to fit me more. I do like a challenge. I can be direct, and I'm also very determined. I have to remind myself that it is okay to relax every once in a while. Additionally, having a behavioral blend high in eyes was spot on. I like to be reassured that I'm doing a good job, and that's something that I've always looked for. Next slide. I've been told that I'm expected to be determined and inspirational. Others see me as being able to take charge and accomplish the tasks at hand. People expect me to be bold and brave, when in reality I can be very anxious. I tend to be recognized for my optimism and outgoing personality. Next slide. I'm driven and energetic. I tend to have more conflicts due to being confrontational, but I think it depends on the situation. According to Carbonell, she states, "Let your successes make you humble and easier to work with." I can be influencing, inspirational, and I'm very interested in people. I can be friendly and outgoing and stand out in a crowd. Wonder Woman. James Peterson discusses the idea that so many of us try to strike this Wonder Woman pose, making us appear stronger than we truly are, sometimes faking it until we make it. We can act strong even though we may feel weak. Next slide. Burley Allen discusses the idea of tuning others out and effective listening to what and how it is said in order to respond correctly. Some people find it difficult to express their emotions, and some topics may be completely off limits. Recognizing words that may not mean the same to others. It's also important to know, as discussed in the movie Fireproof, when we first meet someone, we begin to learn their likes and dislikes, their hobbies, their habits, and things that are important to them. Unfortunately, after time, we tend to stop learning about other people. First and foremost, ways that we can overcome these barriers: to set realistic goals, to listen non-judgmentally, to hear what an individual is actually saying. And Burley Allen defines methods to improving our listening skills. Find common interests, take the initiative, actively work at listening, make meaningful notes, and resist external distractions. Finally, in conclusion, before this course, I always considered myself to be a good listener. Boy, was I wrong. After completing this course, I've truly begun to understand what it means to have effective communication skills. As humans, we all have, for the most part, mastered our language ever since we can remember. However, for some, communicating to others seems to be a difficult task, while others seem to articulate without complications. I think that it is important to always keep an open mind when beginning a conversation. Helping other people understand who you are and listening when others are speaking is so important. And lastly, self-disclosure also helps us to learn about ourselves and to see ourselves more clearly. Thank you for joining me. Have a great evening.